Hi, my name's Henry Tsay, and I'm very honored to be one of the first men standing here on this TEDxTinHauWomen stage. Except that I'm a man with an ID that says I'm female. Most of you in the audience have probably never paid attention to that one letter, an M or an F on your ID or your identity document. But imagine not being able to access basic services like going to the bank, going to the gym, or even toilets without having to worry about being humiliated or embarrassed. And I'm here to tell you the untold story as to why that one letter, an M or an F, plays such an important role in your quality of life. So growing up as a gender non-conforming child in Hong Kong was a struggle for me, especially when I was sent to an evangelical girls' school by my conservative family at the age of 12. I really hated that uniform, the cheongsam, and I tried my very best to bypass it. Luckily, I was a keen athlete, and I was training almost every day, so I had the legitimate reason to wear the tracksuit instead. Puberty was particularly difficult for me. I developed a hunchback as I wanted to hide my chest when my breasts started to grow. But that was no longer enough, and I started to bind this alien part of me. Day after day, I would wear a chest binder with layers of bandages to bind my chest to make myself look more masculine. I was obsessed with chest binding, and I wore that binder 24/7. And even in the hottest days of the Hong Kong summer. It took me almost fainting once when walking under the scorching heat that I realized that something deeper was going on that I had to address. I couldn't see myself living with this body, entering the workforce, or forming intimate relationships with others while living as a woman. I needed to resolve my gender dysphoria. Eventually, I plucked up the courage to start medical transitioning. At the time, I was studying in the UK, and I was very fortunate that I had access to gender-affirming care under the public healthcare system. Once I started hormone replacement therapy, my body started to change almost instantly, and I became more masculine. My voice broke and dropped, hair started to grow everywhere on my body, and my shoulders broadened. I was so happy with the changes that testosterone brought. And then I had a double mastectomy, what's commonly known as top surgery. It was a life-saving process for me. And it was the final piece in allowing me to be who I'm supposed to be. After the procedure, I was no longer triggered by gender dysphoria on an hourly basis. I could finally wear a shirt without having to worry about my chest or my binder. It was the first time that I felt at peace with myself. Like many other trans men, I didn't feel the need to undergo any further surgeries that are invasive, expensive, and potentially dangerous. I was living as a man, and I was a man. After my gender transition, in 2017, I returned to Hong Kong for a job offer at an organization that has some kinds of LGBT inclusive policies in place, which is something very rare in Hong Kong. The work was great, and my colleagues didn't have any problems whatsoever with me being transgender. But once I'm outside of work, it's a different story. Apart from the fact that none of you in the audience would be able to tell me apart from the man on the street, my ID still says I'm female. And you may wonder, why does it matter what it says on your ID card, right? Except that it actually does, and it affects me every day of my life. Under the local law, it is an obligation to carry your ID whenever you're out on the street, and the police officer has the power to inspect it anytime. Whenever I'm asked to present my ID, it's like being outed all over again. My counterparty would not believe that this bearded man in front of them is the same female stated on the ID, and it raises suspicion instantly. I've had problems when trying to withdraw money from my own bank account. Once I took my ID out, the bank staff suspected that the ID was a counterfeit one because of the huge incongruence. And then I was asked to resubmit all the documents that I had already submitted for re-verification after spending a great deal of time re-explaining that I'm in fact a transgender man. Whenever I go see a doctor, to see a dentist, or to see the immigration officer when I travel abroad, I have to sit and wait to be called out by that familiar and humiliating "Mitsei" and face the confused stares from everyone around me. I was rejected from renting a place at a youth hostel before. Everything was going great until the very moment that I presented my ID. The manager's face expression completely changed, and there I was rejected a place to stay afterwards. It's the same story over and over again in all the other gender-segregated spaces. In fact, it is illegal for me to use either the male bathroom or the female bathroom in the public spaces as a transgender man. Because legally, I'm not male, but it would be the crime of loitering if I scared the ladies off in the female bathroom. I mean, for the ladies in the audience, if you see me in the ladies' bathroom, it'd be pretty scary, right? Without the correct male ID, it's just no way for me to live a normal life in Hong Kong. Getting a job, getting married, or just settling here would be a huge issue. I've stopped going to the gym, and I've given up on sports altogether because of the issues around which changing room I'm allowed to use. My life passion of sports has been taken away from me. I can't even pee in peace. And you may wonder, well, why didn't you just change your ID card to a male one, right? Well, changing that one letter on the ID card as a transgender man in Hong Kong is exceptionally difficult because we have one of the strictest laws in the world. If I want to change that one letter of gender marker on my ID card as a transgender man, I would have to first have my uterus and my ovaries removed, which means complete sterilization. And second, I would have to have an artificial penis constructed. To create an artificial penis with a reasonable size, it would involve a multi-staged surgery called phalloplasty. So it's essentially harvesting of skin, usually from your arm. And then that piece of skin is rolled up like a sausage, transplanted to your groin area. and then it's followed by an installation of an implant, usually an hydraulic pump, to allow imitation of penile erection like a cisgender man's. These are exceptionally invasive surgeries, and not to mention that they are medically unnecessary for me. So, essentially, I've been put in this impossible dilemma. A, either be harmed by surgeries that I don't need in order to change that one letter on my ID so that I can live a normal life, or B, to endure the never-ending discrimination rendered by the wrong ID card. And I chose to break the status quo instead. In 2017, after being denied a male ID card by the Hong Kong government, I launched a lawsuit to challenge the current ID amendment policy that requires transgender people to undergo what's called full sex reassignment surgeries. The court dismissed me twice, and they postponed things multiple times to dissuade me from continuing. Despite every case laws, international confidence, and even common sense are on my side. After losing the first 2 rounds, I couldn't stop myself from having this doubt. And I thought to myself, what if I lose the case? How will I live my life? And how can my trans siblings live theirs? The legal marathon in the past 6 years has been exhausting and dehumanizing in every possible way. In February this year, the top court finally ruled unanimously in my favor. And the 5 judges declared that the full sex reassignment surgeries requirement is a violation of my human rights. This ruling is not only a milestone for our trans folks in Hong Kong, as sterilization remains a common requirement for legal gender recognition in most parts of Asia. Like my lawsuit, there are similar cases going on now in our neighboring jurisdictions like Taiwan and Japan, fighting for non-surgical legal gender recognition. 9 months on from the court ruling, and I'm still waiting to get my ID changed. And there are more things to do with regards to legal gender recognition more widely. It's estimated that transgender people take up less than 0.5% of the entire population. We are so tiny as a community that we're almost invisible. This is why I started my own NGO in 2020 in order to help myself and to help the folks behind me. Last year, we launched a campaign called Transman in Hong Kong, Visibility versus Invisibility, to tell the stories of 8 local trans men who are not recognized as male by the Hong Kong government. Like myself, they all desperately need a correct male ID card in order to live their lives in Hong Kong, to work, to marry who they love, and ultimately to live with dignity and pride. And it shouldn't take another lawsuit for us to get that materialized. It's time now for change in Hong Kong and Asia. And I invite you all to join me on this journey of transgender equality and be the change. Thank you very much. Okay.